In today's video, I want to show you how to correctly laterally adjust a blade in a bench plane. Hope you enjoy. So what I wanted to do here first was show you how to laterally adjust a metal hand plane that's got a lateral adjuster, one that doesn't have a lateral adjuster in the bevel down. I also want to show you how to use the Norris adjuster to laterally adjust a blade in a bevel up or low angle hand plane, and also in the wooden bodied hand plane. So first of all, you probably need to know how this is working. So I've taken the lever cap off, and our lateral adjuster has this little round piece and it goes into the slot here. So when we put that in there and fit it down, we can see that blade is clearly moving laterally. So what's occurring is when I push this way, you can see that this is right across on the opposite side. So what it does is, when I push it this way, it pushes the blade that way. When I push it this way, it pushes the blade that way. So when you adjust, you're pushing towards the high spot and it's pushing the blade the opposite way. So now we're going to look at what the second type of lateral adjuster does, and that's called the Norris adjuster, which does more than just laterally adjust the hand plane in one of these planes. So if we have a look here, we can see it's this little piece here, and it moves back and forwards, and it's got this pin machined through the blade here, and that's what acts on it. Some of the older versions just have like a threaded coil piece that acts on it, and that's a little different to what these are, but most of the modern ones you're going to find with this sort of machining. So that's what I'm going to talk about, because that's what the two types that I have, or two brands that I have, use. So it sits on here, and we move it just like we did the last one, so to the high spot, and it'll rock the other way. But you can also see on these low angle planes there's not much adjustment in them, because it's just not needed. They just don't have the same range of lateral adjustment due to it not being on a frog and it being down in the housing, so there's just not as much need for as much adjustment. So when it comes to these style, all the adjustment or the ability to adjust and stop it moving is to do with how much pressure is applied using the threaded screw on the top of these screw caps. So when it's applied here, you'll do it up to a certain point and it won't laterally adjust here at the moment. So if I release that off a bit, you can see now I can laterally adjust it. So the idea is you set your lateral adjustment, then lock this down. It'll still allow you to make the blade go forward and backward, but not enough to actually allow it to slide side to side. You've just got to be careful when you lift it like this and you're sighting down it if you do it this way, and I'm not so sure this is the best way with this style to actually look down, but it does work. You just got to be careful. You just want to make sure you don't release this screw too much that the whole blade and everything, or the lever or screw cap, just slides out. So you don't want any of that loose enough that it'll fall out. You want it there enough so you can look down it to move it side to side but not fall out. The other way you can do these, if you've got one that has the blade protruding, and some of them do, this one doesn't, the other brand I've got over here doesn't, but some of the older ones, and I believe the Nielsen ones, are like the more traditional style, and the castings are lower so the blade is protruded, and you can actually come in and actually tap the blade to adjust it laterally. So when it comes to the Norris adjuster, it is just not as easy and user friendly to operate as the dedicated lateral adjuster that you have on the frog of a bevel down hand plane. And so these can be a little bit annoying, so do be aware of that. And some people do, as I mentioned, they like to use a hammer to adjust it laterally if able to, but a lot of them don't allow for that. So you just got to get used to your pressures to make those adjustments and fine tune it. And so what that leads me into is our next set of hand planes, and that is how do we adjust hand planes without a lateral adjuster at all in either a metal bodied or wooden hand plane. So let's jump down and have a look at that. The method that I'm going to be showing you here is the same, essentially the same whether you use metal body hand plane, which there aren't many of these around. I believe that they added it from the Type 6 onwards, so this happens to be a Type 4, so there's not going to be too many of you that are going to have these particular hand planes without a lateral adjuster, but if your lateral adjuster breaks and you don't want to replace it, this is a method you can use. Or if you get one that's meant to have a lateral adjuster and doesn't, at least you know how to adjust it. So let's just quickly look at the metal bodied hand plane first. So when it comes to adjusting one of these without your lateral adjuster, it's a little more direct in what you're doing. So with the other one, we'd push the lever to the high side and it would move it across by touching the opposite side of the blade. What happens here is we're more essentially directing things. So what we want to do, even if we're looking up this way and doing it, what we're looking for is we're actually going to hit the side of the blade that is high down here, sticking through the mouth. So when we do that, what it does is it's pushing this side across and it's pulling this side up. So we've got this sort of seesaw motion. And so hitting that across is going to send the blade that way, which is going to drop the opposite side down. So we hit the high side to adjust it. Similarly, that's what we're doing here. We're going to hit. So we hit the high side, hit the low side. It's doing the same. The one extra step that you've got here is that after you make an adjustment like that, you have to hit the wedge. Adjustment across the other way, hit the wedge. Because that wedge is our lock, every movement we do has to hit that wedge afterwards just so it doesn't move. And so that's how we adjust, or that's really the difference here between these two. Just that you got to watch out for that wedge and make sure you tap that wedge. All the other movements and adjustments are identical with the lateral adjustment between the metal bodied one without a lateral adjuster and the wooden one. So before I wind this video up, I just wanted to cover the two methods that I use to fully square the blade up to the sole of the hand plane. I have done a dedicated video on this once before, and I'll leave that link down below because I believe I'm probably going to go into a little more detail on that one than I am here. I'm kind of just glazing over it here so you get an idea of what's going on. So if you want a little more dedicated information, I do check that video out below. So for this video here, I'm actually just going to be using my Bailey hand plane with a lateral adjuster, but do know these two processes are more than doable with all of the hand planes, and I do use these two processes on all the hand planes to square my blades up to the sole. But I'm just using the one with the lateral adjuster because it's going to be a little quicker and easier for me to show you that here today. So you're going to sight down the sole of the hand plane. Now, when doing this, it is very beneficial to have something like a piece of white paper or something below it so it contrasts against it, so when you're looking down the sole of the hand plane you can actually see the blade. Now I will bring you in and have a look from my point of view as best I can, but I just want to talk you through the process first before I do that. So what happens is we have the blade protruding on one side or the other. It doesn't really matter. So let me just get it. So in this case it's high on my right, your left. So I'm hoping you can see that right now. The blade is sitting high on this side just here. So we're going to push that lateral adjuster to that side, and to our eye we're looking for that blade to look square across or parallel to the sole. Now what we do is we grab our depth adjuster and we reduce the depth of cut, and then we do that same thing again. We're sighting down and making any extra adjustments using that lateral adjuster lever on the back there until it looks like it's square once again. And so we just keep repeating that process of retracting the blade, making little tiny adjustments, and what it does is as the blade disappears towards the sole, you can just see little changes in what needs to be squared up, and so we can just make those changes. So you can see it just here. Laterally adjust it. Bring it back a little bit more. And we're just going to micro adjust it. And right there now that blade has just disappeared behind the surface, and you can see the back of the mouth just here. That's the eye method, but this is not as accurate. You're not going to get your blade 100% square doing it this way, I find. And so we're going to go into method 2 here down at the vise, and then you can see how you can really sort of tune it in and make the final adjustments. So let's jump down here and get started. So first of all, you want to make sure that blade is completely retracted like we did in the last step. And so now what you're going to do is you come across to one side, see if it takes a shaving, push it to the opposite side, see if it takes a shaving. So what you're looking for is the two extremities of the blade and to get them to take an even shaving. So what I'm doing first here is just advancing the blade. So they're both catching, but they're big thick shavings that we don't want. So now I need to just retract it back a little bit. And you can hear that's just catching the surface, but this side is not. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this side is catching and that one's not. So I'm going to minusculely sort of use a pinch like this and just move it across a very tiny amount and then double check. It's still slightly catching this side and not this side. So I'm going to do that again. Now if you need to, just clean the shavings out of the way. So I can hear that it's sort of touching that side, but it's not actually taking a shaving. So what I need to do is adjust the depth slightly more. So we can see we're taking a shaving there, and we're taking a shaving there, but we're taking quite a heavy shaving, especially on that right side. So I'm going to adjust my depth back just a titch. So we can see clearly there that we took a much heavier one on that side, so we're still going to adjust it further across that way. So we can take a little wispy thing that side, but it's slightly more wispy on that side, so I'm just going to send it back just a titch. So I need this to be advanced further forward. So we can see that shaving is from the right. That shaving is from the left. Both these shavings, you can see that they're very similar in thickness. There's not much in it. They're both sort of half translucent. They do have a few little breaks in the shavings, and that is probably due to a little nick in the edge of my blade, so that's just something in the sharpening process. But we're looking at the actual thickness and the size, and what we're getting is very consistent results from both sides of that blade. So that is a good indication that our blade is now nice and square, because we're getting the same size shavings off both sides, or both wider extremities of that blade. So there you have it, folks. That's how you laterally adjust a plain blade to square it to the sole in a metal bodied or wooden bodied plane, whether you're using the lever or a hammer to do that process. It is essentially the same once you get the hang of which way you need to tap it or move it. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe down below. While you're down there, do sound off in the comments if you use a different method for squaring your plain blade up to the sole. I'm eager to find out if there's some better method that I could be using. And if you'd like to see another great video such as this one today, do check out the video up here where I show you how to correctly attach and adjust the frog on a metal bodied hand plane. Bye for now.